Hello everyone, this is Direwolf20 and welcome to a brand new mod spotlight on a new mod which we've never covered before. Today taking a look at Astral Sorcery. Astral Sorcery is a magical based mod which is really cool, and it is pretty much based on doing some magic with some power from the stars. And that's where it gets the name Astral Sorcery. It's pretty neat. It's a lot of fun to play with. I spent about 2 days trying to figure out all the concepts of the mod and how things work. It's really in-depth. It's definitely a work in progress. There's a ton of content already, and the mod author already has tons of stuff planned for it. It's just really a good mod. And for those of you who are, looking for another magic-based mod, kind of missing certain, historically popular magic-based mods like Thaumcraft, this may very well scratch that itch. So, without further ado, let's get started taking a look at Astral Sorcery. So Astral Sorcery's knowledge book starts out, you get it when you spawn a new world, or you can go ahead and craft it. It's not too bad to get your hands on. And you start off finding out that there's some ores in the world that you can find. There are 2 in particular, rock crystal ore and aquamarine shale. So as you start reading the book, you'll notice, like I said, there are 2 types of ores, aquamarine shale and rock crystal ore. Rock crystal ore, which is pretty sensitive and fragile, and mechanical hands may not be careful enough when trying to break the ores. This is what the ores will look like underground or in the world, and simply breaking them, you will find that you get yourself either aquamarine or rock crystals. And rock crystals, when you break, have a chance of dropping more than 1. I've seen it drop as little as 1 or as many as 3, so it's kind of like redstone in that regard. And you'll notice the rock crystals don't stack. That's because rock crystals have some unique attributes to them, and when you hold shift you can see them. But you can't see them yet because you haven't really figured too much out about rock crystals. Now, as we're looking through the journal, you'll notice that each of the different sections are connected by some lines, and there's a little bit of white energy traveling from one line to the next. That's a pretty good indication that where from one location to the next is kind of feeding in that direction. So you can see that this Ancient Shrines note feeds off into this Constellation Paper note, and it feeds off into this Resonating Wand note. So Ancient Shrines is probably the next thing we're going to want to look into. And it indicates that scattered across the environment, there are some ancient shrines from an ancient civilization that are pretty cool. And you can find them all over the place. There's a few smaller shrines around the environment, like that one over there. And you'll occasionally find inside this shrine, underneath some of the pillars, a treasure chest with some loots inside, including constellation paper, which if you look inside the journal, you will find out what constellation paper is all about. Basically tells you that inside the chests, scattered across the shrines in the world, you will find this paper, and after collecting the paper, it will automatically associate itself with a specific constellation in the sky. So notice, when we mouse over the constellation paper here, it says there's nothing here, yet when we pick it up and place it in our inventory, we discovered one of the many constellations that are available in the game, which is Armara. Cool. What's even cooler is you can shift right click your journal and stick the Armara constellation paper inside there. And from that point forward, there's a new tab over on the right called Constellations, and we will see that Armara is now available. There's about a dozen of these constellations available. The good news is that you will never find a duplicate in the chest. As soon as you pick up a piece of constellation paper, it randomizes the constellations you haven't discovered yet, so you don't have to worry about finding another Armara constellation. When we pick up this constellation paper, it's automatically give us a new one, Avitus. Neat. So I can go ahead and shift right click, put the Avitus paper in there. We're going to need that later, and we'll see that Avitus is now available to us, and that will continue throughout. Once you've discovered all the constellations, you will not get a message on the bottom of the screen, and the constellation paper will remain blank. At that point, it's recommended to go ahead and just stop collecting the constellation paper and leave it for other players to find if you're on a server. So since we found this nifty little device, we'll go ahead and grab our aquamarine. You can also collect these marble pillars if you want. You're going to need a lot of this marble stuff later. You'll also find marble elsewhere in the world. So that was a small shrine, and it wasn't exactly what we were looking for. The one that we're looking for is a larger shrine that looks more along the lines of this. This giant shrine is going to be what you're looking for first in the world to really get started in this mod. And if you go ahead and start digging down into this shrine, you'll notice that there's actually an underground area, which is pretty cool. Inside this underground area, you might find more chests with more constellation paper or just randomized dungeon loot. And you will also Oh good, more constellation paper. Find something really important, which is this guy, a floating crystal from Astral Sorcery. Nice. One of the notes in here said maybe placing a crafting table nearby would lead to interesting results. So let's get ourselves a crafting table and place it nearby. Suddenly, we'll detect a beam of light traveling from the floating crystal into the crafting table. Cool. The next thing that it looks like we need to craft based on these traveling white lines is a resonating wand, which is going to need a couple pieces of marble of any type, 2 aquamarines, and an ender pearl. Sounds pretty easy to me. Let's get ourselves an ender pearl, 2 aquamarines, and some marble. Nice, we've got a resonating wand. Note that that's only craftable in a crafting table near to a floating crystal, as demonstrated here. Do note if you're looking for more marble or sooty marble, which you'll need eventually, there is an entry in the book here. You can find it underground or in any of these structures throughout the world. And sooty marble is not too bad, just some marble surrounded by some coal. Pretty simple and straightforward. The next task is to get a luminous crafting table. As we can see here in the book, using a regular crafting table to interact with starlight is probably not going to work for too long. We're going to need to set something a little bit more efficient. So the instructions that we're given here are to get a regular crafting table, some marble, and some sooty marble, and go ahead and craft what's called a luminous crafting table. Pretty cool. Let's give it a shot. There we go, so a luminous crafting table is now made available to us. Excellent. You'll also notice a note on the bottom of your screen saying that your vision has expanded, and we've learned more about exploration. Exploration is an entirely new chapter available to you inside the journal. So we've completed discovery, which we can see here, and we now have a new chapter called exploration. Mouse wheeling in and out of the journal can work, or you can just simply double click to access that chapter immediately. And you'll see there's a lot more items available to us. A chapter pretty much unlocks all in one go, and it accesses a bunch more items and blocks that are available for you to craft. So there's 2 entries that seem to be staring us in the face right here. Rock crystal properties. And this is where we can see more information about those rock crystals, which we've gone ahead and mined up. We'll notice that there are now 3 attributes available on a rock crystal: size, purity, and cutting. These 3 attributes are important later and throughout the mod. These rock crystals can be used for all kinds of different stuff. So you'll notice that there's some crafting recipes for them and lots of different things, so you can get some tools with them. And the properties of the crystals that you use to make the tools determine how good the tools can be. There's lots of JEI integration here, so you can see a lot more information. There's also a section on crystal tools later on where you can read more about that. Pretty cool. So one of the things we might want to do is get a grindstone, which is pretty simple and straightforward. And a grindstone is going to be one of the first things that we're going to craft inside our new fancy luminous crafting table. So let's go ahead and place our luminous crafting table somewhere in the world. And if we open it up, we'll notice there's a bit of a power bar there that doesn't move very far. So one of the first things you're going to learn about the luminous crafting table is it uses the power of starlight to craft. Well, I don't see many stars. I don't know about you guys. So let's go ahead and make it nighttime. And suddenly there's way more starlight power available to us. Awesome. So now we can go ahead and make our grindstone. So a grindstone is made with a couple sticks, a piece of marble, and a couple pieces of wood. So let's get a couple sticks and a couple pieces of wood, and we can go ahead and try this out. So to craft with the luminous crafting table, we're going to need our resonating wand. First, we place the crafting ingredients in the table. If, for example, there's not enough power in the table, you will see that as a visual representation. This might even be enough power for the grindstone because it's a pretty cheap recipe, but you can see that we've got plenty of power here. Simply right-click on the luminous crafting table with the resonating wand we made earlier, and all of a sudden the starlight will infuse into the items. And the items will be crafted, and you will get the item that you're looking for. In this case, the grindstone. Nice. The grindstone can be used to improve the cutting aspect of the rock crystal while diminishing the size. So you can see that this is a size of 301 and its cutting is 8%. Go ahead and right-click it in there, and then right-click with an empty hand. You'll notice that it'll spin once. Shift right-click to remove the crystal. Now when we look at the attributes, the size has gone down, the cutting has gone up. There are other ways to improve this crystal in the future of the mod. Do be careful, because if you grind the crystal too much, it will eventually break, as we just saw. So you can see here, the crystal will break if you grind it down beyond, a really small size. And it does lose a pretty significant size attribute every time you grind it, as you can see there. So 232, we grind it again, and now it's at 216. But the cutting has been improving. Again, the attributes of the rock crystals will affect the tools that you make with them, and there are some really nice and powerful tools that you'll get access to a little bit later in the mod. The next thing that we'll probably want to take a look at, aside from some of those crystal tools and the grindstone, is the Lightwell. One of the things that the ancient sorcerers detected here is that this sunlight can condense, or the starlight for that matter, can condense into a form of liquid. And in order to do that, we're going to need to get ourselves a Lightwell. And a Lightwell is pretty straightforward to make. We're going to need some runed marble, some chiseled marble, some rock crystals, and some aquamarines. There, that looks pretty nice. We'll go ahead and activate the crafting. And we can place our Lightwell somewhere in the world. Now, this thing won't be able to collect light by itself, as indicated in the journal. We need to go ahead and add an aquamarine gem, which is the catalyst which helps to collect the starlight and focus it into the pool. So if we right-click an aquamarine on top, we'll see it's starting to form some liquid inside the basin. Once it sits there for a little bit, it will, pretty much fill up that basin. So you'll notice that over a period of time, the aquamarine that's sitting there does get destroyed. You're going to want to go ahead and throw another aquamarine on there, and you're going to collect more starlight liquid over the night than you are during the day. Eventually, this basin will fill up such that you can get yourself a liquid starlight bucket, which has many of its own uses. One of them is to create yourself a sky wave resonator, which is crafted again inside this crafting table. The star wave resonator is going to help you to visualize where in the world starlight tends to accumulate. So some areas in the world are better for your luminous crafting table to exist. For example, if we hold the star wave resonator here, we'll start to see as we fly around, certain areas start to illuminate with some blue sparkles. Let's find one. Hey, there we go. Just found one right here. So again, holding the star wave resonator in your hand is what causes these blue sparkles to appear. This indicates that the area right here is really pretty good for starlight. You're going to get a lot of starlight by hanging out in this area. So this is a good place to place your crafting table. The white sparkles inside the blue indicate it's even better than your average area, so we just found a really good spot right here. Let's move our luminous crafting table over. Later on in the mod, it becomes easier to transfer starlight and collect starlight, so you don't have to worry too much about staying in this area. But early on, this is definitely a good area you're going to want to hang out in. And we'll notice that when we place our luminous crafting table down here, it's going to have a decent amount of power, even during the daytime. Slightly more than we had before. It should also be noted that the higher Y level that you're at, the better the starlight reception will be. So placing this high up in the sky will have a better result than placing it pretty low to the ground. Let's give that a try. You'll note here that even during the day, we've got a significantly improved amount of starlight hitting the luminous crafting table. Now, you'll notice that the luminous crafting table filled up its internal buffer at night very easily, but as you may have guessed, there are higher tiers of crafting table that require better starlight. My recommendation to you is to build this luminous crafting table pretty high up in the air to start with, because you will be expanding this as a multi-block later on. So there's a few other things we can take a look at in this chapter. You'll notice that there's a hand telescope, which is pretty neat. The hand telescope is going to be much more useful later on, but if you go ahead and make sure that it's nighttime and you start looking through the telescope here, you'll notice that there are quite a few stars in the sky. Pretty cool. There will be some stars that appear a little bit larger than others. How interesting is that? I wonder what that's all about. Inside the book, you'll see that there are ways to go ahead and detect certain constellations. Let's go ahead and give it a try. So if we look at this constellation, we can see it definitely forms a pattern. And if we look in the constellations that we've discovered, I wonder if one of these constellations that we've discovered already through the pages match up with those big stars we found. It certainly does seem this way. It kind of looks like Avitus, I think. So if we were to start up here... No, that's a little bit trickier than it seems. We might need to try a better mechanic with this. I bet there's something we can use this telescope for later to make this easier on us. Yeah, let's give that a try. So now that we've gone ahead and checked out the hand telescope, there's a few more things we can try. One of the things to take a look at is illumination powder, the cave illuminator, and nocturnal powder. Cool. So illumination powder and nocturnal powder are both pretty nice devices, and the cave illuminator is a really nifty little tool. So if we were to, for example, hop down from here and check out illumination powder, you'll notice that it's basically a handy replacement for torches. Pretty nice looking. Not too shabby. Nocturnal powder, on the other hand, oh, by the way, illumination powder can be right-clicked to be thrown, and wherever it lands, it will place one of those lights, which is pretty spiffy. And nocturnal powder can have the same effect. However, nocturnal powder has the opposite effect. It creates a dark area wherever it lands. Whoosh. And inside that dark area, monsters can spawn. Bad times. Don't worry, the area will dissipate pretty quickly, but just be aware that that nocturnal powder is pretty powerful. The cave illuminator is also a nifty little device. What it will do is automatically map out any caves beneath the player or wherever it's placed and start illuminating the caves for you automatically. So let's give this a try. If we switch into spectator mode here and start looking around underground, what we should find is eventually some caves being lit up automatically by these little lights. So the cave illuminator will start automatically placing lights for you in a pretty nice and efficient way to help light up any caves underground. Neat. It'll also automatically continue to expand, so as you start mining underground, you'll see your caves start to be lit up by the cave illuminator. Spiffy. Finally, there's the spectral relay. If you're finding that you're having a difficult time getting some starlight harnessed into the area that you want, you can go ahead and build this nifty little multi-block structure. It's pretty small and easy to make. And what it'll do will help to boost the starlight that's going into your nearby crafting table. There's better ways to boost your crafting table starlight later as well. The final important part of this chapter is upgrading your starlight crafting altar. So in order to do that, you're going to need some of that liquid starlight bucket that you've gotten earlier, and that's going to allow you to upgrade the crafting altar. And you can see here that you need to go ahead and place your liquid starlight bucket with a rock crystal right inside. So let's get ourselves a rock crystal, a starlight bucket, and place them inside here. You'll also notice that you're going to need to place 2 chiseled marble and 4 marble pillars on the sides, like so. Looking pretty good. You're absolutely going to want to do this at night, and you'll notice that now we have the option to actually upgrade this altar. Right-clicking on it with the resonating wand will go ahead and start the upgrade process. Excellent. Beautiful. And you'll notice that your vision has expanded once again, and we've learned a new chapter. Basically, each chapter is gated by upgrading the altar. Once you upgrade the altar to the next tier, the next chapter inside your journal will expand, and you'll be able to do new and cooler stuff. We've now got this nifty gadget, but the bottom line is red. Why is that, you may ask? Well, if you take a look in your exploration tab here, you will go ahead and find that there's something we didn't notice. There's another page. We have to actually build a multi-block structure here to go ahead and expand this thing. So I'm going to build this off camera real quick. If you look at the little star on the top right, it'll tell you exactly how many of each block you need to build this multi-block structure. You can click and drag around to get an idea. As you can see, most of this altar is built. The last is 2 pillars and some chiseled marble on top. I wanted to make sure to point out that the marble pillars are pretty spiffy looking. Once you place 2 on top of each other, they form a really nice looking pillar, and you can continue to expand that upwards if you wish. The pillars are just pretty fancy. So once we've got the 2 pillars and this guy on top of each other, we should have an upgraded altar now. And you can see that the starlight beam is actually pretty good. So even at this height, right about midnight, which is when you're probably going to get the best starlight, you're full, but you're probably going to be much lower amounts of starlight hitting this altar if we had built it at the ground level. And as indicated by the message we got a moment ago, we now have a new chapter available to us, Attunement. This is where you can attune yourself to certain constellations that are available, found throughout those different books. And there's a lot of different devices here that we can take a look at. One of them specifically is the telescope, which I was telling you about earlier. The telescope will allow us to really start getting an understanding of some of those constellation papers that we found throughout the books. Let's go ahead and place our telescope down somewhere and start peering through it and see what we can see. You'll notice that as you look through the telescope, you may or may not see some of those larger stars. And as we start flipping through the arrows here, it kind of turns the telescope to different locations in the night sky. Hopefully we'll find one with some of those large stars eventually. Hey, look, there's something. Right off in that direction. What could it be? Let's find out. So looking at the pattern that the stars make, I'm going to go ahead and assume that it looks a little something like a Vetus. It does look kind of like that, doesn't it? If you can't see it, you will in a minute. What you need to do at this point is start drawing lines between each of the larger stars and try and match the pattern that shows up in the constellation book. And as you start drawing these lines out, you'll start to see that pattern emerge. Ta-da! We discovered the constellation of Vetus. And what's really cool about that is that once you've discovered the Vetus constellation, it may start being available to you in the night sky. Excellent, there it is. So it is off kind of in that direction. Different daytimes or different days have different things. And as you discover all the different constellations available, you'll start seeing them all in the sky as you start looking up. That's a pretty cool little mechanic. And again, continuing to flip through the pages here, we'll see some more stuff showing up. So this one here kind of looks like, let's see, it might be this one. I'm going to go ahead and assume that it's this guy. Nope, that can't be right. It may have been one that we haven't yet discovered in our book, but I think I do have one that I found here. This looks to be like one of the patterns that I recognize. So drawing the lines here should tell me if I'm right. Aha! I was right! We discovered Armara. Sweet. Where is he in the night sky? There he is, right above our head. You'll notice the constellations totally move as, you know, the suns pass overhead. So, like, as the sun and moon move across the sky, so do the constellations, which, again, is a really nice effect. So we've discovered 2 of the constellations in the night sky. Again, you're going to want to explore the world to find more of this constellation paper. There's about a dozen you need to find, and once you find them, you can start looking through your telescope and identifying them in the night sky through this little mini game that I just showed you. Now, there's a lot to cover in this chapter, so what I think we're going to do is wrap up part 1 of the Mod Spotlight right now. We're going to come back in part 2 and cover this chapter and potentially the next one. We might even finish it up in part 2, but it might wind up being a 3-part spotlight. There's actually a lot to cover in this chapter and the next, so I'd put a bet on a 3-part Mod Spotlight if it were me. So for now, Pt1 signing off on part 1 of the Mod Spotlight on Astral Sorcery. Definitely hope you guys enjoyed it because there's a lot more cool stuff coming up. In this chapter, we start getting active channeling and some different nifty wands that we can play around with, some alignment charges to augment your character. There's a lot of powerful stuff, and this is where the mod really starts to open up and become more powerful. So for now, take it easy.